What up, Texas basketball fam? I'm Keenan. He's Ari. We're here to talk about the transfer portal today. What do you got, Ari?
Well, the question, I guess, right now, Keenan, is who's staying, who's going. We know Devin Askew is gone. He's the transfer from Kentucky who announced that he was gone. And look, this is a guy that I think came in with a decent amount of fanfare. He was highly recruited to Kentucky, probably didn't live up to any expectations, neither at Kentucky nor at Texas. And now he's got to apply for a waiver in order to be immediately eligible. You get one free transfer, and he did that to Texas. So, he's either going to sit out a year or get a waiver for availability. And I guess I'm confused as to why he's gone, but I don't think this is a huge loss. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the overall theme of players leaving is kind of troubling, but he individually is not necessarily a massive loss. But, it's starting to become a trend now. This is the fourth guy who's left the team over this. So Ramey left, Jalen Tyson left, Trey Mitchell left. He's not officially in the transfer portal, but he's definitely gone. And then Devin Askew today.
So you mentioned the troubling trend, and obviously in cross college basketball, the transfer portal is huge. Iowa State just learned this week that Tyrese Hunter, who was the Big 12 freshman of the year, is off to the transfer portal. And so there's hard feelings there. We know Oklahoma and Iowa State and Texas Tech really built their rosters to the transfer portal. So what do you make of, we're now 3.5 years into this thing. It started in October of 2018. What do you make of it? Is this an issue, do you think?
I think it could be considered an issue, but what I think is more important is players having autonomy over where they play. I think that that's fair. And while it's kind of unfortunate for a lot of different programs because they're going to be losing great players left and right, I think it's important that the players have control over where they play and don't have the NCAA in their back pocket.
And both of those things could be true, right? We can sit here and agree that yes, the players should have the power to go where they want to go and have that autonomy and ability, as you mentioned. It can also be troubling to a certain degree, and there could be concern over it, especially because, it's a numbers game. Tyrese Hunter will find a landing spot. Devin Askew, I suppose he will, but at this point, there are far too many players available in the transfer portal than roster spots available, especially at the Power 5 or Power 6 in basketball. So you get guys that are leaving Power 6 programs that will not stay at the Power 6 level. And maybe that's their intention, and maybe it's not. That's the troubling part, is the math. And you hope that over time, these kids get a better idea of the math in terms of are you a fringe guy? Are you still going to be a Power 6 player? Are you going to move down? Are you going to get minutes? There are risks involved to these players leaving.
Yeah, definitely. And, again, like I said, I think it's important for players to have control over themselves. It's sort of a huge change, especially considering the NIL's impact, how much more players can control over where they play. But you're right. There's, I think, 13 to 1,350 players in the transfer portal right now. There are not that many D1 spots left.
No. Not even Power 6, D1. Good point.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Some guys, have entered the transfer portal and decided to come back. But it's also interesting with the whole, I saw somebody tweet about this. I think it was Rob Cassidy, who was when a player announces they're transferring or entering the NBA draft, it's just I can tell you one thing, I'm not coming back here. That's
Courtney Ramey.
Yeah, exactly. So, I just, this happened at Tech with Beard as well. Players would leave, and Namari Burnett left for Alabama. And he's had 4 guys leave this team, with plenty more that could. Timmy Allen could leave, although he said on IG Live, he was on Courtney Ramey's IG Live a couple days ago and said he hasn't decided yet what he's going to do.
So, and that's where I wanted to lead you next is Timmy, Marcus Carr, Dylan Dessou, Andrew Jones.
Right.
All guys are available to come back for another year. Who do you think will come back out of that 4?
I don't think Jones will come back. I don't really think Carr will come back. I think Dessou will come back. And then I'm not sure on Timmy Allen. That's a toss-up for me. It would be huge for the program if he did come back to Texas. But, it's hard. Playing for Chris Beard is not easy. I think it's like a grind to play for him. The way that he coaches, the way that they play defense, the sacrificing your offense to play better defense. That's why a lot of these guys have these big, stat lines coming in, and then they get to Texas and they don't show those stats anymore. It's not just because they're at a different level of playing. It's really because they have to exert so much on the defensive end that it's not always easy to come out and score the amount of points you're used to scoring.
No, good point. So I think the Beard thing's interesting because I think Beard is a good enough coach. I think he's a great coach. Sometimes there are going to be some tough things that happen because of that, but at the end of the day, I think this is the guy that's the best coach for this program. You see this across the country when it comes to coaches. I mean, the situation with Bill Self and Remy Martin could have gone poorly. It obviously came to fruition at the perfect time and worked out perfectly, but similar dynamic there. And there are 10 other examples at Kansas of it not working out as well as it did with Remy. So, I mean, Keenan, is that your vantage point of this? It's just something you have to live with Chris Beard and understand that some kids aren't going to be able to deal with it?
Yeah, I think it has to be. I mean, I agree Beard is a great coach, but I think it's like a blender, and sometimes you get thrown in there and the blades are too fast. And this has happened to him in the past. It's not just a thing that's happening at Texas, though. I think the amount of guys transferring out is kind of alarming. I won't lie about that. It's going to be difficult again to rebuild through the portal, although there are some guys that have announced that Texas is in their top few schools. We can get to that in a minute, but yeah, I think it's fair to be slightly alarmed by this. I don't think it's completely freaking out to say that, but I don't think that Beard is the wrong guy for the job or anything like that. I just think you're going to have to find guys that are willing to sacrifice offensive numbers to play with this unit.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about the future. So number one, there's 2 5-stars coming in here as recruits. So that's good news. Dillon Mitchell, who's an absolute stud, small forward, who just won the MVP at the Jordan Brand Classic. Arterio Morris is from Dallas. He's another 5-star kid coming in, 6'3", 190-pound point guard. And then Rowan Brumbaugh from Massachusetts is a 4-star. So when you consider who's coming back, plus these 3, and then that Texas is going to be active in the transfer portal. Kendrick Davis from SMU put Texas along with TCU, Texas Tech, and Kansas in his final 7. He's going to announce on Friday. They're going to be in on other guys too.
For sure. I think that the guy that they have the best shot to land that could be very impactful would be Fardaws Imack, the center from Utah Valley, who dropped his top 5, which is Texas, and then Tech, Gonzaga, Iowa, and Washington. And, the one that kind of sticks out is Iowa. It doesn't really fit with the rest of them. But what I was thinking about was think about how much success they've had developing big guys offensively at that program. Keegan Murray this year and Luka Garza last year. So that kind of makes sense to me that he would go there. I think that he would be an immediate impact starter. He's 6'11", I think. Averaged 19 points and 14 rebounds last year and shot 43% from 3, and was named the Western Athletic Conference Player of the Year the year before last, and he's made the conference's all-defensive team twice. Wow. So that would be like an ideal ad for the Texas no-middle defense.
Yeah, I mean, and weren't we concerned this year with the lack of rim protection with their defense?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, that was a big problem. And, hopefully they get Dessou back because that would be a nice person to be able to throw out there at the 4 when you have Fardaws playing center. There's a couple of other guys too. Terry Roberts, I think Texas has a pretty good shot at him. He played for Bradley. He averaged 14.5, 5, and 4. Pretty solid, 6'3" shooting guard, 45% from the field. He dropped his top 10 list, which has Texas, Oregon, Florida, Georgia, Maryland, Memphis, Missouri, Northwestern, Mississippi State, Wichita State. So I don't really understand the point of dropping a 10-team list. It's kind of ridiculous, but it's fun for them. They're getting hyped up about it. It's like they're getting recruited all over again. So, it's just fun.
Davis dropped his list down to 7.
Yeah, I know.
It's like, that's still, you usually go from like 7 to 3. That'd be going down. 7 is not a doubt.
Yeah. There were guys on Orange Blood's like, why are you even posting this? Like, what is the point of posting this? It's like, I'm just trying to keep you guys informed, man.
What about Morris and Mitchell, 2 5-stars coming in, plus Brumbaugh? I mean, do you think these guys are immediate impact guys?
Absolutely, especially the 2 5-stars. I could see a situation where Brumbaugh doesn't play a ton his freshman year, but with the lack of guard depth, he might play a ton. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you can really play Brumbaugh and Morris at the same time because Morris has some experience playing off ball as well. So he's generally more ball dominant, but I think he could play with Brumbaugh, especially since Askew is gone, because I think Askew is going to get a lot of numbers or a lot of time this year. And
why do you think Askew transferred?
Man, I don't know. He had he averaged about 15 minutes a game this year and was averaging like 2 points, a rebound, and an assist or something like that. I think he had more turnovers than assists. But I was very confused by that. This seems like the one place he could stay and actually develop a name for himself. I have no idea where he's going to end up. I really don't. I mean, he's from California. Maybe he'll go to one of those smaller California schools like San Francisco or something like that, or St. Mary's, or whoever, somewhere on the West Coast. But yeah, I was blown away this morning when I saw it. I was really surprised.
Yeah, I mean, I think he played better at the end of the year probably than he did earlier. I know he had scored the most points he had in the season against Gonzaga early in the season, but it felt like he just never had anything resembling a consistent offense and wasn't much of a threat. We talked about his ability to play defense, right. But I feel like his development, like he looked at the end of the year like the best version of himself, considering what we saw at the beginning of the year. So, it's bizarre. I don't know if he was a 4 or 5-star. I remember when he went to Kentucky, he was a big time player. If he was a 5-star kid, he certainly did not appear to be one of those at Texas.
No, and he was also one of those guys that reclassified. So he was playing college basketball at 17, which is, really hard to do. It's a big – I mean, a lot of guys have no trouble with the leap, but a lot of guys do have trouble with the leap. I mean, look at Imani Bates this year. So guys struggled through that, but I was very surprised, man. I mean, I don't want to say it's not a huge loss because it's sort of like disrespectful, but I mean, he is not a super impactful player yet. I'm not saying he can't end up as one, but I really thought that transition of his game becoming, sort of a bench unit player to starting, I thought that path was in his future at Texas. I'm just really surprised he left.
All right, let's talk about the other positive asset right now of Texas basketball, the Moody Center.
Oh, yeah.
Did you get a chance to go look at it?
I didn't. I had a doctor's appointment this morning, so I had to miss it. But all my friends who are journalists were sending videos of it, putting them on Twitter. It looks
Joseph
gorgeous.
Cook from Inside Texas had some good stuff. I mean,
exactly.
Tell people what's different about it that, makes it the asset that it could be for Texas basketball.
Right. Well, the way they set it up is the fans are set up differently. So the student section is around like 60 to 70% of the court, instead of having them pushed into the corners or behind the baskets, which made it impossible to have like a really scary home advantage. Just the way it was set up physically, it didn't lend itself to rowdy environments necessarily. Although they did do a good job this year of getting pretty rowdy crowds in there. It was, as you said on a different one, it used to be just nothing. Nobody would show up no matter what.
Nothing. Yeah.
And this was a team that, super hyped coming into the season, but I think people saw pretty quickly that they weren't going to be a Final Four team. And yet they were still packing that arena and people were still showing up, and they were running, promotions and stuff. And so I think I wrote a piece on Chris Beard's season and like what I would rank it like on A to F scale. I gave him a B, but I gave culture building an A+, because that is something that hasn't really happened at Texas in a long time. And the fact that he was able to get that going is really important for a lot of reasons, for recruiting, for just home court advantage, and for just building momentum for the situation in general. So Moody Center is going to be a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, I think from an environment standpoint, I think just the newness of it will be exciting for people to check out. And I think in some ways we kind of look at this Texas basketball season and think, man, considering where they were when the season started to what happened, I think this is a pretty successful season. You go and you get a postseason win. When was the last time Texas won a tournament game? So they won a game.
Right.
And then, we know what happened with Purdue. They just got a really bad officiating assignment and could not win a basketball game against Purdue with the way it was being officiated, the way that they want to play, the way it was being officiated. So, I mean, I get it. They were a top 5 team preseason, so they didn't meet those expectations, but still, despite all that, they won a tournament game for the first time in how many years? And as you said, culture building, that this was step one for Chris Beard. I have no doubt in my mind that Chris Beard will win a national championship at Texas. I really have no doubt about that.
Yeah, I agree. But what I love, not to jump off subject, but just to jump to Dillon Mitchell for a minute, he might be the highest riser of that whole class because he was, I think, ranked 29th when he committed to Texas. He's a Rivals top 5 guy now.
Wow.
So he has been dominant. I'm working on a GIF breakdown of his Jordan Brand Classic performance actually right now. So he has been unbelievable. He was great in the Geico Nationals, great in the McDonald's All-American game, great in the Jordan Brand Classic. Like, he's been showing out against top competition. And obviously the Jordan Brand Classic and the McDonald's All-American games are kind of like all-star games in the NBA where there's not a ton of like super impressive defense going on. But the Geico Nationals, that's no joke. Those guys are out there performing hard. They're going as hard as they can because that's their championship to them. And the way Dillon Mitchell was able to play against those guys and look so impressive lends itself to a player that's going to be very successful at the next level. And I think, Beard doesn't really start freshman, but I think he probably will.
Yeah. And look, what I've seen of him, really good handles for his size.
Yep.
This is elite athleticism. So we talked a lot last year about the lack of rim protection, athleticism. This is a guy that can rebound, can get after shots. And then on the offensive end, he's a guy you have to account for because of his size. I mean, how do you match up with him at 6'7", but his handles? I think he has to develop a little bit of a shot, if I'm not mistaken, from what I've seen from him. But
not from deep, but like, yeah, he can like spin around and hit a mid-ranger every once in a while. Saw him do that.
Obviously, he's going to have to at some point try to stretch it out and develop a little bit, but he is a guy that's going to score a lot around the rim and great athleticism. So I think you're right. Like, you get 2 5-stars in a class. That's a pretty good class. And that's the expectation of Chris Beard. So much focus on the transfer portal, and rightfully so. But like, you got to get guys and develop guys, and you got to recruit. And, look, these guys probably aren't going to be, 2-year players. If all goes well, these are one and done guys. But, maybe a Rowan Brumbaugh is a guy that stays for a couple of years. And now you get a few of those guys, and then you add depth through the transfer portal. Like, that's the recipe for winning championships.
Absolutely. And, it's really going to depend on who they can land in the portal. I don't think they're going to land a lot of these top end guys. Like, I don't think Kendrick Davis is probably going to go to Texas. It's funny is I heard about his possible transfer back to TCU because that's where he started.
Yeah.
And if they get him, that's a top 5 team. That's how good
no
that team will be because they return Mike Miles. They return the entire starting 5. And then another option for him might be U of H. And like, think about how good U of H would be if they landed him. I mean, Sasser's coming back. So
is he a Dallas kid?
Sasser?
No, Davis.
Kendrick Davis. I forget where he's from, but I mean, he's been at SMU and TCU. So I think he's going to stay in state. I really do.
He's got Tech, Texas, TCU, Houston from the state of Texas on his list out of 7.
Yeah. So I think he's going to stay in state. I mean, he could end up at Kansas, right? That was one of his options.
Yep.
Yeah. So that kid is a stud. He averaged, I think, like 19 and a half points a game from Houston. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I was reading a comment on OB about how U of H has built this culture of like representing the city of Houston. Like, they're Houston's team, outside the Rockets. And that's something that Texas needs to build on, like represent the state. Like, rep where you're from, rep Texas. And I think that Kelvin Sampson's done a really incredible job of building that culture there and becoming this they could be a juggernaut next year. They could, depending on who they land in the transfer portal, because Kenneth Lofton is very high on U of H as well, as is Kendrick Davis. They could land both of those guys, return everybody they return, and then bring in Jarris Walker and Terrence Arsenault. And that's the number 1 team in the country.
Yeah, you're right. All right. Make sure, if you have not yet already, give this video a thumbs up. Also, subscribe to the channel as well. We're going to be back doing some of these Keep Austin Beards throughout the off season as news comes about. But Devin Askew transfers out. Still a look at the landscape here, the rest of this roster, and a lot of things to be excited about. So, Keenan, appreciate you, buddy. Thank you.
Appreciate you, brother.
Let's call you Kendrick. Kendrick
My
Womack,
middle
everybody.
name, dude.
Kendrick
Lamar's
new album comes out in May. Can't wait.
It does. Very excited.